All right. So our
Okay.
speaker tonight is going to be Camden Hicks. And I don't think Camden and I thought much of each other at all in the last 10 years because I photographed his family, I think 20 years ago. Does that sound
Yeah. Well, let's see. Yeah, about.
with something called film. Um,
And then I think Phoebe and her cousin also took a kids class from you one
oh
summer.
yeah, I used to
Yeah.
teach photo camp.
Yeah. Camp, right.
So we ran into each other at a show I'm part of, and he said he was a photographer, and I said, show me. And he showed me on his cell phone, and I booked him right there. So this is going to be really fun. We got to see a sneak peek last month, and I think you're all going to enjoy this a ton. So I'm going to hand the screen over to Camden. And if you have questions, just hit one of the reaction. There's a reaction button where you can raise your hand, and I'll keep an eye on it. And I know that Camden will be paying more attention to his photos, so I'll be the
Yeah.
interrupter.
Because I think, let me just say that I think that the way I'm having to scroll through all these, if someone has a question at the end, it's kind of difficult for me to get back to someplace way back there because I have to sort of scroll through really fast, and it's not very. It's kind of cumbersome.
So we'll stop you
I
as
mean, questions are fine, but to refer to a particular photo with a question is tougher to do at the end.
Where's the reaction button?
see at the bottom where it says react.
I see participants chat. Oh, I got it. React. I see.
So
Thank
if you
you.
hold that little triangle down, or no, hit the heart. Let me see. Yeah, hit the
Okay,
heart,
it's a heart.
and
Okay.
there's a little raise hand button. So then I'll call you out. I'll basically interrupt him.
Oh,
And
thank you.
he's got his screen up. So I just learned that you can switch screens. You can go from seeing his screen to the group. So if I just hit Camden's screen and I can now see his title page. Can you all see his title?
Ordinary world
Yep.
Yes.
And
with
it's some
with the unknown camera.
yeah, with the unknown camera. Well, some sort of what do they call them? A TLR, which is
Yeah.
like a twin lens reflex. And I had no idea what it was because I moved from that to a brownie pretty quickly. Um,
You don't have it anymore.
I wish I did, but you know, boy, that was a long time ago. Um, so, but all right. So I'll just sort of start chatting here. Stephanie already said hi, everybody. Thanks for having me, and it's been kind of fun to look at some of the videos. I mean, the YouTubes of some of your work, so I get to know some of it at least, and what you each do. And it seems a lot of you have some photography background, maybe even careers way back when, and now you're doing this in retirement or something. But I, on the other hand, was never really a photographer by profession. I was an architect and but always took pictures from that early age. And like a lot of you went through the TLR to the Brownie to some, point and shoots and segued into like the Canon FTBs and the AE1s, which is still one of my favorite old Canons. I'm a Canon guy, not a Nikon person there, Stephanie. Um, anyway, and then entered the digital world. But it wasn't until about 15 years ago I really started paying attention to shooting a lot more. And when I started looking at a lot of this, my body of work, from way back when and from 10 years ago, there seemed to be a couple of things that were emerging. And that's why I sort of chose this title, An Ordinary World Lyrically Composed. And what that sort of means to me is it's kind of an ordinary world, just things we see out there, what we pay attention to, and how we see them, how we capture them, and what kind of magic there is out there, which can be anywhere. Like in my flyer, it could be 10 feet away from the kitchen sink or anywhere out in the world, travels, whatever. And but the lyrically composed to me, and I'll read a little bit here, is an aesthetic approach to realist representation of everyday lives rendered with subjective framing and poetic treatment of the things that we all do anyway, of light, space, texture, gestures. And we each do that to some extent, but I just bring my own way. And that usually begins, and usually is informed by my architectural background because there's some order to it. And I've done these things. I've shown people some photographs, some other photographers, and they'll see 5 or 6 images of almost anything, and they'll say, "You're an architect, aren't you?" And it wasn't architectural stuff. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
I can hear you. I'm muted because our dogs are barking.
Okay, no problem. So that's kind of where this came from. And so I have been shooting forever, and I just happen to have this great little shot. And one of the things that I realized is that growing up, my grandparents and my parents and cousins, everyone had cameras, good cameras, and they were all shooting. So, it must be somewhere in the DNA. I'm not sure. What I also realized that there's so much that I do that's sort of all over the board. It was really hard to break it down into categories because they started being what was going to be a nice big category ended up really being edited down to a smaller number just because there was such a breadth. And that's, for better or for worse, that's what I ended up with. And the Instagram handle that I use, and I'm still on it. I don't do things that often, but you can see a long history of everything I posted for years is the Instagram, mentioned here at Camden Hicks. So I've just broken into some categories, and I'll start like when I did my last little 10-minute presentation. The idea was this is just things that I see out in the world, and I started in my kitchen within 7 feet of the kitchen sink, and of course, I could have done a whole show on that, but in this, I just wanted to do a very condensed version. But I'm calling it what I see on a day going to work. So I wake up in the morning, I have my tea, and this was an exercise in photographing my teacup. My wife says to me, and I said, okay, I don't want to just photograph it. I want to photograph it in an unusual way. So this is what I came up with, and then I went to work. And of course, we always have flowers and the light streaming in. I've got to take a flower first thing in the morning, or find something that's worth sort of having a little fun with. This is still before I go to work. Noticing when the sunlight comes in, and this, for example, is the sun hitting utensils and their future ingredients kind of thing. And part of the fun is having titles for some of these things. But you see it, you shoot it. And this, actually, one of my more favorites is Cindy had said, here, try doing one of these. And she brought me a few eggplants. And how are you going to shoot a little eggplant? So I set them up on I have a zinc countertop, and I arrange them. And I look at them and I go, they have gestures that to me sort of say something. And for me to do this array of 3, it just got me thinking, what does this really look like? And everyone might look at this and say, well, it's 3 eggplants. Yeah, so what? But what I saw is a procession of the eggplant family towards the ratatouille of their future. And Alain seems to be oblivious. He's on the left. Jacques laments his fate. He's in the middle, head kind of down. But Dominique exults in her higher calling. So part of the fun of doing a shot is sort of giving it a narrative, just to help people see what I see. And then I walk outside, and sometimes I'm really blessed by having an incredible sky. And we all take skies, of course, but this one happened to have a tree right where I wanted it. So, okay, on the way to work. And then around the yard, there's always something going on. And in the fall, we have crepe myrtles that fall, and they get speared on these dietes there, and they just sit there like that. And of course, you got to photograph them, right? they're just sort of serendipitous little things that are worth capturing. And part of the exercise is to not only get it, light has to be good, but then you see a little bokeh up in the corner. So the composition includes the little, light circles up on the corner. And that's part of the composition idea behind this.
So how did you get the black backgrounds? Are you using a flash?
Well, you know, in a lot of these that are outside, I just happened, the sun was hitting this, and in the background, there was a wall that was in shadow, and the only thing that was catching light were a few leaves.
Okay.
So it's just this, I didn't use anything black. When I'm in my kitchen, like this, I keep one, it's like a black card, construction card. And when I feel like having a black background, I just set it right there. It's pretty, low tech.
I love
Rather than blurring out the back or doing it with an app or something like that, I just keep my black card handy.
Okay.
the reflection is so cool.
And and then I take one, I go, God, I should have had a little more reflection in there. And I do have one that has more reflection, but these things aren't as well exposed. So I had to pick one. But of course, you take 3 or 4 shots and you pick the best one. And in this one, the reflections, yeah, there should have been more of them. Oh, well.
No, I like them the way it is.
Yeah, go good. Thank you. Um, So of course we see these things, right? And I sort of really started getting into macro, and that's when you go out into the garden, and when you start looking closely at things, there's amazing stuff. And if you're lucky, you get beautiful backlight, and it will backlight the silks of the spider web as well as the spider itself. So I'm starting my little journey down to work, which is about 5 blocks away, and I go through the Robson Harrington Park on the way. And of course, there's just all kinds of flora and fauna and things to enjoy. And this, for some reason, really struck me because the little plant was growing and the nail had been embedded and turned down, and the light was hitting it just so. And it was a very yin-yang, wabi-sabi moment for me. To see the contrast in these 2 little things against the texture. And of course, we're all lucky around here in the Bay Area, where we are at least, to have agave plants, which are just incredibly photogenic. So we all probably have tons of photographs of these things. And I've got 1 or 2 that I just highlight a particular part or a gesture that I'm drawn to. So I'm moving through the garden here. There's a fig tree. And there's a fig leaf hanging down. It's backlit. And this literally, I shot it, turned it to black and white, tweaked it just ever so slightly. And this is what you get. It's which just really opens up another world of black and white of flora and fauna. And to me, which is pretty striking, because there's not a whole lot I had to do to it, but change it to black and white. Same thing with poppies. They're incredibly, especially in the right light, they just do amazing things with light and shadow, and sometimes better in black and white because you really get to see their form. But they're also good in their own color.
Lovely.
Yeah. And get down to the bottom of the hill after I shot, and there's a drinking fountain. For some reason, I wanted to drink, and I turned the faucet on, and I saw the light hitting it, and I just stepped back and said, "Oh, this is worth a shot."
Okay.
So I had to shoot it.
Nice. Really nice.
And then downtown San Anselmo, which is where I'm from, this is on a different way to work. There's the fountain in the George Lucas Imagination Park, I guess it's called. And this is his character. This is the Harrison Ford character in the center of the fountain, and he's just worthy of a shot, especially when we have a sky like something we don't have very often in the Bay Area. So when you get sky and you get light, got to take it, right? So I get closer to work, and I'm just, there's been a little bit of a spit of rain. This is what happens. And just outside my work, I have a little field of more poppies, and it had just rained, but the sunlight started coming out, and I took a close look and really saw how beautiful the drops were. And so I got out of my car, literally I'm on my stomach, probably getting wet, starting to shoot the poppies from, a foot off the ground, because they were so beautiful. And people were saying, what are you doing down there? Well, here, this is what I'm doing.
I love the drops.
The drops are beautiful. And I didn't, didn't really do much to this photograph. But just framed it a little bit more. So I moved it so the bouquet was where I wanted. And that gesture in the middle, which is a poppy that has lost its leaves, so it's a little further along in the evolution. It in and of itself was worthy of a shot. You know, a couple of them were like that. So this one is barely, the one on the left is barely starting to unfurl. The one on the right has unfurled, probably closed up because it was because of the weather, but they're all drops. So behind there were these beautiful things after everything drops, and that's what they look like.
Are you normally walking around with a macro lens?
I'm walk with all my lenses basically.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean it's a very compact little camera case that I have that I carry 4 lenses with. So I use what I need to use. So I'm flipping around every now and then, and I shoot what I need to shoot with the lens that I need at that moment. So then we go to the streets, and that's, you know, I don't do a whole lot of street photography, but I realize that I do, and I enjoy it. And some of this came from, this is the photograph that I showed Stephanie, which is in front of her studio, that I entered into the Mill Valley click-off photography competition last year, which I'll tell you a little bit about in the end. But this won the street photography division. And I showed this to Stephanie. That's how we got reintroduced, saying, I got to show you a photograph because I hope I don't get in trouble. Because I stood out in front of your shop. Your name isn't on here, and I didn't give you credit, but I thought the window was so beautiful, and the brick was so beautiful. It's all very well composed and very architectural. I just waited for people to walk by that would give me the shot I was looking for. And this just happened to be the winner. And I realized, yeah, I've done some other street photography, which is kind of fun. Downtown San Anselmo, there's a bubble man. And he does, really fun things with bubbles. And sometimes the kids get enveloped. And you're just trying to catch that little moment. And this I really loved because it was at night. It's a little tough to photograph, but with all these bubbles floating up there and the kids pointing and reaching for them. And it just so happened that there was a show going on in one of the storefronts. It was an art gallery. And the show was a reality check. So in shifting perspectives, there's something about the hands, the shadows, the bubbles up there that to me was just a really fun capture in a moment on the streets. Now, this is now in New York, and a lot of street photography in New York, but I was watching these little kids on their way to like a field trip or something, and they were a clan, they were a group, they were a clan, and they were soldiering their way to wherever they were going. So I just loved their gesture, especially next to the tree where regular life is going on beyond them. Person walking a dog, a nice vertical pole, things in the street. And that to me was just, the perfect little action
Where
moment.
are you? Where are you in New York?
This is New York, probably on the upper
look
west side. It's on the west side, probably around in the 50s.
It looks like it's France.
The little boy, the boy in the dark, he looks French, and some of the other things certainly could be, but it's New York.
Huh. Cool.
And then down in the subway, I just caught the glimpse of this guy who was carrying his cello to the subway, and I didn't ask his permission because it happened so fast. And oops, I didn't get the other ones in there. Shoot. They didn't get in there. Oh, well, there are a few others of him that may or may not come up later. And this is in San Francisco, which is, very architectural, but a nice homeless encampment right out in the middle of everything. Looking down, I was just struck by the patterns of the bench and the light and the shadows, and a little longer exposure caught the blur. And this one, which I really loved, is I was at the MoMA and in San Francisco, and there was a show of photographers, the great street and French photographers like Dozeneau and Cartier-Bresson and all that. And so I after seeing the show, I sat down and said, I want to capture something like that. So I sort of stopped at an area, put the camera down, got the exposures right, and waited. And what I loved about this one was I caught the one person walking by, because I was probably shooting at an 1/8 of a second or something. And the person who was taking a photograph with their phone of a photograph. So this is telling quite a story of that moment in the museum that didn't exist half a second later.
Her hands there really, really tell the story too.
Yeah, and then see the shadow. So these things where I see these elements, and when I'm sort of cropping, and this didn't really take much cropping, but those are the things I was kind of waiting for. So when you see them, that's when you click, or you do a little burst going ching ching ching. Hopefully one of them will be perfect. Because probably there was one right before this where he's right in front of her, and that's a crummy photograph. So, split second later, it was perfect. And this is in Spain, actually, the streets of LaGuardia, which was just a very lonely scene of an older man taking his time walking down a deserted street. Oh, here's the guy. This is after the guy on the subway, he had stopped. And then he kind of looked my way, and before I could say, do you mind? I just took a couple of photographs. The thing came up, and we were done. And I thought, I'm not going to publish this thing anywhere. I think I'm good. Public place. I don't have too much problem with that. And this is there was like a lemonade truck, and I stood back. It was actually taking photographs from the side, but I moved my camera a little closer, took a couple of pictures. He saw that I was taking my picture, and as soon as he did, he backed out into the shadows. But for that moment when the light was great, that's what this came from. And it was another one where I decided I'm not going to publish this one anywhere. So he's in public. I don't think I could have asked him if he's okay with my taking his photograph, but I didn't. And this is just, struck by this guy biding his time on a little loading dock, surrounded by colors, blue, red, yellow, sitting on his phone, just waiting. New York street scene. And this is in Porto. And, some street musicians. Also in Porto, taken looking down from our hotel room in a typical street. This is in front of the Broad Museum in LA, which has all these lights that are sort of along the pathway. And these folks were sort of walking along there, and I just told them, just walk. I want to just shoot you while you're walking. And they stopped right where they were, with one light looking right up his, butt, and the other in her face. And that was a moment. And then they moved and went on. But this could have also gone under architecture. It's an incredibly photogenic building. This is, I realize I go to a fair amount of concerts, and I guess they're mostly jazz, and I go to mainly listen. I know others have done, music photography where they're taking pictures from great points of view and just wonderful compositions full of energy. And what I realized I was doing was going to a show, really enjoying listening to what I was listening to 95% of the time, but wanting to capture a couple of key moments that just, were a gesture or a face or something that told a story. And they're all from the audience point of view, because that's where I am. This is Fred Hirsch in a few moments before he started whatever beautiful piece he was playing. And in that moment, he bowed his head, and probably for about 3 or 4 seconds, he composed himself and then got up and started playing. Trumpet player at the Freight. He's an Oakland trumpet player. I forget who it was, but I should know all their names. And this was a long shot. The back of the room, through a bunch of people, of a bass player who was moving forward and backwards. And as soon as he moved in such a place where his hand was in the light, it was horrible lighting, straight from above, and these little parts of his bass were lit. That's when I took the shot. And this was probably taken from 50 feet away with a 230 millimeter zoom. And if I cropped it any wider, there would be people in it. Just by the nature of the shadow, I got a floating hat. And I seem to be drawn to hands, because I love the picture of the bass player, but I was most drawn to the highlights and the hands of his bass. So this is Jeff Picker, a bass player for a Sarah Jarosz group, and it's just called Jeff Picker's Hands. And I guess I took bass. I like bass players. I don't know what it is, but they're into their music and they get lost. And this is Esperanza Spalding, who played with Fred Hirsch at Yoshi's, and she was really fun to listen to and watch. And I was just waiting for her to do a few things that were so beautiful, and she wasn't in front of the microphone necessarily. So that's sometimes hard to do if you can't move around. So that's the moment I thought was worth capturing for that. Sometimes I wonder which is better, black and white or color, and some work for some and some work for others, but here's one of each. And this is Kurt Elling and Charlie Hunter, who were in concert. And again, they were enjoying communicating with each other. And this was one moment out of that whole show. Then, because I'm an architect, of course, I have a lot of architecture shots, but not always just of buildings per se. There are things about them, whether it's details or a point of view or something that's just not pure architectural photography. Like this one, which is downtown San Francisco, but I was literally driving up Brannan Street in my car, and I saw these buildings, and I took this in my car. I was at a stoplight first, so I could actually kind of get it right, take the shot, and then when I got home, I would straighten and do a few things to it, because I don't have a tilt shift lens, so I'll straighten them, basically just an iPhoto. And it just became a lot of, space in the middle, but a lot of texture on either side. Another building downtown that I realized, a lot of blue buildings, but this one I went black and white, but was using an app at the time that I didn't use that often called, Color Splash or something. And noticing that there were 3 windows that were open, I thought, I think I want to highlight those windows in their original color. So it's sort of this hybrid, and I get to do that because it's not totally truthful, but it's my artistic impression. And this I was struck also downtown in the sort of incongruity of an old telephone pole and its wires that's right across the street from glass and steel that's encroaching upon, that thing is probably gone now because it's been developed. But this caught a time when we were at the edge of building, and that incongruity might not exist anymore. And this is, and the other place that I think those who are local is a great place to shoot is the Marin Civic Center. Frank Lloyd Wright designed that great building, and there's so many points of view and so many things to shoot that I just picked a few. I know Charles has done a few of this, probably won awards on some of his, but that beautiful spire, it was sort of a minimal shot with the sky. And here's kind of the quintessential pairing of the building itself, including the spire. I think there was a shot like this at the Marin County Fair that won an award. And then once you go inside, looking through the skylight, you still can see the spire through, it was a rainy day, so there's water on the skylight, and it's just a different rendering of the same spire. And you get to compose these, the other little features in black and white. And this, the shot also on one of the floors where, in a very rare, completely deserted moment, other than one person who came out, she stood in the light, and that lasted about 5 seconds. And it's not the typical photograph you see of inside the Marin Civic Center. But to me, it just captured a color moment that I hadn't seen before. Going up the escalator towards the light and looking down and very rigorously composing the bottom of the escalator. This is definitely an architect. Now we go to LA, and of course the LA International Airport has that iconic building at the airport. And so it's always worth trying to get a shot or two of. And this particular one I liked because of the light, and I could sort of frame it in such a way that I just got the hint of the two palm trees down at the bottom. So you'd know that we were someplace like LA. And while in LA, everyone has to go to the Disney Center, which I don't have very many photographs of, but this particular composition was something that I was drawn to because it shows a person who's in a focus, the curve, the red, which really popped, and then the broad and beyond that was still under construction. Again, it's just composing elements. And this taken just a couple of years ago at LACMA, where there's a new addition that just opened recently, $1 billion building that the Geffen Wing. And they took away a bunch of buildings, and this is all scaffolding for a complete, cast concrete structure. So all this scaffolding is gone. So this was a capture that didn't last for very long because it's all gone. But what is still there is the red columns and part of the roof, and probably the Coca-Cola machine down in the left corner. I think those are still there, but everything else is gone. Now I got to go down and see what the center really looks like. And this also was a Mill Valley Click-Off winner of the category structure. And Charles Versace took a third place in that. I took a second, and another friend took first place. And I did have the picture of the three of us in front of our photos, but I couldn't squeeze it in here, unfortunately. But this is the kind of photograph where you get your category, and this one being structure. I have this theological seminary in San Anselmo is a great place to shoot. And it was an exercise in being able to get a lot of texture, two different kinds of buildings, and use a few devices like straightening and, those kinds of very architectural photography devices. And I go there often, and sometimes I just wait for the light to be just right. And in this case, I knew when the light was going to be like this, and when I'd get that vertical line where the light hit it for 2 or 3 minutes all by itself before the sun moved around and it didn't have those shadows anymore. And it was actually reflecting on the little light post that's down in the lower left-hand corner. So it's a study of texture and light, basically. And this is at China Camp. I know somebody did a whole bunch of photographs from China Camp, which I had said this is a really wonderful place to shoot also. There's just great things. And I came away from my shoot there with one favorite shot, which was basically framing the East Bay Hills beyond through a window that is in a wall that's full of texture and falling down. So that was my takeaway, which is a very different takeaway than than others who shoot China Camp come away with. Now this is the air. We're going to Madrid. So this is the airport in Madrid. Fascinating place, worthy of a shot. So, and this is at the Reina Sofia Museum, also in Madrid, and a spectacular building that if you're up on an upper terrace and you go to a certain spot, this is what is framed in that beautiful domed, structure beyond. That's the architect in me again. This is pure architecture, but a lot of reflection and repetition and a beautiful building. This is at night when just walking down the street and the way this thing was lit. I put it in architecture, I guess, because it is, but it's really almost abstract in the way the light hits it. And this is at a Caixa Forum. It's another building in Madrid. There's actually designed by the same people who did the De Young Museum, Herzog and de Meuron, really wonderful architects. And this is the main stairway out of all stainless steel on the way up to the exhibit center. And so you sort of camp out at the stairway, compose a few shots, and get one with a longer exposure that shows people moving up and down. Another, beautiful place to photograph. And this is in the middle of the Rioja area, winery, Usos Winery, done by Calatrava, who is a really wonderful architect engineer, and it was a great building. Worth a visit, and you could do a whole series on this building. And I picked one.
Okay.
And so then we head to New York, and I was in the front of the little, commuter sort of rail at the airport, and luckily I could get to the very front, and there's just like you're like in a window, and of course I was ready to take a shot, and so coming around the bend towards sunset, God, what do you see? This is what you see. And of course, in New York, it's all about buildings, but this just happened to be, didn't really do anything to this, but happening to see all these things all in one frame down near the World Trade Center, area, that new building, Millennium Tower, whatever it's called. Um, you know, Pure architecture, but also a composition of it. And this sort of another somewhat cliche of down in that area, but there's a lot that's in this picture from, the Calatrava that's on the right, his structure, which is very expressive, and the actual Millennium Tower or whatever it's called now, and the older buildings reflected in, and the newest building with its red little cleaner hanging there. But to me, this was all about a composition. And then you go up to the Rockefeller Plaza, which is another terrace. That's just a great place to shoot from. And you just can't help but doing perfect symmetry with the Empire State Building in the background and this beautiful fleur-de-lis in the foreground. Perfect shape. Kind of cliche, but I really like it. Interesting. Okay. And this, it's just what you look up and you see a pattern of things. And this just happened to be all air conditioners. And it was very graphic to me, how incredibly graphic it was just to have shadows in the windows and all the air conditioners sticking out. Very architectural. And this is actually just the very top of the Chrysler Building, taken from the observation at Rockefeller. And you see so many pictures of the Chrysler Building. And if you go a little further down, you'll really recognize its top. But I was really drawn to just the very uppermost part of it, and how much detail there actually is that you just never see from afar. And this is the Met, and a bunch of umbrellas that are out front that just become, again, very graphic. It's like a graphic designer or an architect just decided to compose walking down the sidewalk and all these key elements into one shot. And once inside the Met, they've got these beautiful columns that were just perfectly graded, and these antiquities that were in the foreground that I simply, I cropped this very deliberately so that it would be mostly just gradation and color, or gradation in black and white, with that antiquities at the very bottom. So it's kind of an unusual aspect ratio and framing. Brooklyn Bridge, another sort of quintessential shot, but had to do it. And this is at the base of it. Could do a whole series on the Brooklyn Bridge, of course, but these are some of my faves. And I realized I do a lot of bridges, I guess. And this was, on the drive up towards Syracuse, where my daughter went to school. And the old Tappan Zee Bridge was taken down maybe 8 years ago and then replaced with something very new. And this is the approach when you see the new. But when it was being taken down, which is, again, you're just sort of seeing this from a distance. So I crop out everything below it. So all I'm seeing is the spires, basically. But while it was under construction, this was actually taken from the old one, driving across, window down, and just shooting a series of shots, hoping I got something. And the new one is in the background, which was in the previous photograph. And so I get, 5 or 6 shots that are pretty chaotic, but I had the camera set, so I knew I was going to be at, 1/2000th of a second. The exposure was right, and I'd get what I got. And this one I think I showed last time as well. It's on the flyer, and this is of the, underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, looking back at the city. Another winner in the Mill Valley Click-Off. I think this is the black and white category a few years ago. But a different point of view of the bridge. The bridge is so photographed that it's sometimes a challenge just to say, what can I do that I hadn't seen before? And I was very lucky to have great sky and a few birds flying. And, you don't get this shot very often because it's usually boring sky, or fog or something. So very lucky. And, bridge is done a million ways, but in this case, someone was watching the bridge, and he was kind of the second subject. Really, was the was the pigeon? I mean the gull. And I tried to wait for him to turn a little bit more to the left to get a little more sun, but he took off. That's the best I could do. But I had him stand in such a place that the suspension span could draw your eye, and the span of the road itself right to him. So, it's composition again. Now here for the final category is abstract, which, we'll talk about this being a great challenge. There's so many ways to do abstract, from, intentional camera movement to macro that is so zoomed in, you don't really have context anymore. So you're just seeing partial, and you go, what am I looking at here? It's cool, but I have no idea what this is. And all these headings right here, that's from a photograph, which is actually this photograph, which is me. It's a self-portrait. And that's me, and my camera is the dark spot in the middle, and my hand is sort of on the right side. And this was actually taken on an airplane, and I was looking into the TV screen that was in front of me that was basically black, and I saw my own reflection in it and took the photograph. And then, just for the heck of it, in this particular case, I turned it green. And this was one that I submitted to O'Hanlon. I do some things there every now and then, O'Hanlon Art Center. And I think the theme was monochrome. And this was one that was selected by their jury. I don't think they even really knew what it was. But if you stand back and look at it, the farther you get back, you go, oh yeah, that's a head and a camera. I see it now. And we saw this before. This was the Guggenheim Museum top floor water fountain in bronze that was reflecting in the drops, the skylight above. And it's another one where you could shoot this in many different ways, and depending on how you zoom, it becomes less or more abstract. And this is a good example of, this is simply the bathroom in the MoMA. And it's got a lighted backsplash and, a chrome faucet. And I set my camera down kind of on the counter, took a couple of shots, and it became very abstract. And it was sort of leading lines. And it's another way to have something that's completely, it's just the way it was. And you're shooting it as is and not really doing anything to it. But it becomes very abstract because you can't tell exactly what it is. And this is at the San Francisco airport. I guess I like camping out at stairways and catching motion. And this is looking down at a moving escalator with the reflections of something up above in the middle, and the granite pavers on the left side. And that becomes an abstract composition. This is an unusual one where every year we have a wreath that is lighted, and I go out and I shoot it by moving the camera. So, and every time I do it, you get a different gesture. And this particular one, which probably was turned on 90 degrees, was one that, as an abstract, also won the Click-Off category in abstract. And all I'm doing is, I used to do this every year. I'd go out to the wreath that's sitting out, near our driveway, and try to do some motion and panning. So you end up doing maybe 15 shots, and one or two of them go, ooh, I like those gestures. The others, eh. And this, I think I showed last time too, is basically a beer can. And it is sitting on top of its own labels that are reflecting in the crinkles. And it was something I stumbled upon as I was looking at the beer cans, with photographing the labels, and they were sitting there and go, oh my God, this is beautiful. So as soon as you sort of recrop it and zoom in, I have a whole series of beer cans. And they get to be pretty repetitive after a while, but this particular one just sort of gives you the essence of that abstract, series. I think I showed this one before too, where you see the reflections, or not reflections, but sort of the refractions, where the silks of spider webs become beautiful prisms if you're just in the right light and you sort of expose it the right way. And this is an example where you can see the silks that are white, sort of in the lower right corner. They're all well in focus. And by doing that, everything beyond becomes the prisms. And I realized this is the kind of thing it's really hard to do with an iPhone. You have to do it on manual, and you have to make sure you're getting a really good focus on the strands, because they're such fine little lines. And then you sort of play a little bit with the aperture to find how much out of focus and where the perfect prism is. And that's kind of where this one comes from. And this one is getting near the end here. This is one of the exercises I had in one of my other photo groups, was to practice panning, where you're actually following something, keeping it in focus, and the background is out of focus, which I end up kind of doing okay, but I found it kind of boring because it made it look like a car commercial. The cars weren't that interesting, and it looks like, they just use that in a lot of car print advertising, for example. The BMW moniker and a driver is in there, and everything in the background is, speeding up. But I found I was more intrigued by a little bit of movement and what it did to certain hubcaps and what it did to the background, which I found a great place to shoot that had great background. So I have a whole series of these car abstracts that's literally outside of my office. And then there's the intentional camera motion on almost anything. This is basically a flower and a leaf. And it's the kind of thing that you can do with 10 shots of those, and maybe one of them will go, ooh, that's my favorite. Why? I don't know. I love the color, I love the composition, but I didn't know it when I was taking it. This another situation where I see something, I take a picture of it, I zoom in, get pretty close, and realize by looking at it, there's a structure on this. And see, it's like crystalline, which I didn't notice when I was taking the photograph, but all this is the edge of a beer glass, and that's beer foam. And this is up in the headlands where there's just some really beautiful rust and decay. And a lot of these things you can just sort of compose as a little piece of art by itself, where I've talked to a few artists and they said, I would love to paint this. Say, have at it, and interpret it however you want to interpret it. But that's it makes for a really wonderful abstract little composition. I think I did this one before. This is simply my casement crank in front of my sink, but rendered in such a way that it really does become abstract. You don't really know what it is. And it's a very formal composition that between, the exposure and the depth of field and the light being just so perfectly symmetrical, which I don't always do, that's how you abstract a casement crank. Pretty everyday thing. And lastly, this is a photograph. Also, you can recognize the background from all the cars that were going by that I took the one shot of. This particular one was another one that I waited for and waited. And I knew what car was coming. I go, I want a red car. I really want a red car. And I looked to the right and there was a guy on a bicycle, which was orange. I said, this is perfect. I have to be ready to take these two as they kind of come together. So, he set it in burst mode and you're going, and I'm not even sure which I was following, but this particular one was the moment I was looking for. And this was entered into that click-off competition also in a category they called chromatics, which is just working with color. And, that was a fave. But it's not panning exactly. It's not totally abstract, of course, because you know exactly what's going on here. But there are elements of both. And with that, I think that's the end of my abstract and a good segue into the new challenge and the upcoming presenter, Charles Versace, who is, I'll just sort of mention him for a second here. I actually met him at the Mill Valley Click-Off because he was also a photographer. And we won our respective, we won first, second, and third prize in one of the categories. And we met and just decided every year we were entering something into this competition because it was so much fun. And we're kind of perennial winners. And he's gotten best in show, and every time he does a category, it's usually a really excellent photograph. So he's definitely worth seeing his work. He's really good. And I don't know if it's worth plugging the Click-Off, if any of you know about the Click-Off, and then I'll finish. Is because those of you who are in the Bay Area, it's a Mill Valley, the Arts Commission has every fall what's called a Click-Off, and you go to the Mill Valley Arts Commission website. It's not on right now, but there's an invitation to join this competition, and it's free to enter. And there's usually maybe 150 photographers of all ages and abilities. And what they do is they assign one of four categories kind of randomly. So you get a category. It might be something that's totally out of your wheelhouse. And you get 10 days to go shoot anywhere in Marin. It's got to be in Marin, in your category, and submit one photograph. And the jury goes and makes their selections. And in December, early December, they present all the winners. And you get to this presentation, you have no idea what's been chosen. So you wait there and watch the screen, and they say, in chromatics, third place goes to so-and-so. And you go, okay. Second place goes to so-and-so. First place goes to, and there I am. I go, now that was fun. And then I'd be sitting next to Charles, and he would be in something else. And, he gets first place. But anyway, it's a great thing to do if you're interested in all, and sometimes either getting out of your comfort zone or taking a week or 10 days and having a reason to go out in wonderful places around Marin to shoot. So I can certainly put a link to that, or remind people in the future if they want to do it. But it's a fun thing to do. Hope to see some of you there.
I think it would be great if you could share that info. I'm trying to find it as you're speaking, but
well, I actually looked at their website, and it's what it is. If you go to Mill Valley Arts Commission and it takes you to the Click-Off, it's basically it's giving the winners from last year as a little gallery you can look at. But there were other things like PG&E warnings and all kinds of junk that were not really worthwhile as a screenshot or a link to. But it's Mill Valley Arts. If you just Google Mill Valley Click-Off, it'll take you there. So
okay, so I'm going to share my screen again so you can all take a screenshot of this if you would like. Ignore my messy desktop. But if you want a screenshot, I'll also post it on the page. All right. All right, so we have, as Camden said, we'll have Charles and my friend Gina will be speaking too for the first 15 minutes. So please come early because it's super interesting what she's going to show us. Okay.
Is that a little flyer you did on Facebook a little earlier?
Oh, you know what? I'll post it in this chat too. How about that for a plan?
Because I saw it, but I didn't really look at it or
Yeah,
read.
I think you'd find it very interesting because it
Yeah.
helps you edit your work. You know how
Oh
sometimes
God.
you know how sometimes it gives you reasons why the thing generates these. It gives you reasons why one would work better for another.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
it's really interesting. I had
Yeah,
so much fun
I
with
could
it.
use that.
Yeah, I had fun with it. I really enjoyed it. So I asked her to come do a 15-minute presentation and then we'll have Charles. And I'm
Great.
also wondering if anybody has any feedback. I'm wondering if August is not a good month, if we should take it off, because it seems like people are out of town. Anyone have any feedback on that? Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be around, so I don't know.
Well, I'll think about it then because I want to
Yeah.
make
I mean, I
sure
think it's,
that,
of course, it's always good to have people in the audience. So if there's any possibility that it could be low turnout, like
yeah, I'll
tonight,
think about it.
it's probably worth considering. I don't know.
I'm out of town. It's a third Thursday. I'm out of
Yeah,
town.
yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Donald? You're in town, right?
Oh yeah, I'm always here.
What
Yeah.
about you and I and Charles? Okay, everybody. Well, I'll keep you all posted. You know, I'll send out an email.
Yeah.
Um, and,
Any
and Camden, if you want to grab,
any questions or anything of anyone? I'm just sort of curious.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that fantastic presentation.
Well, thank
Yes, it
you.
was.
Sort of making a list of my favorites, but it's a long list. But you're, gosh, the bass player and the work from New York, the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building. I think that might have been my favorite.
I like the
The
crushed can.
fire.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah.
What was interesting about those in particular, and I actually took a class at the Image Flow, and
Hmm.
Stuart, who gave a presentation before, was part of it. One of the greatest exercises in this one class was that we were all showing our work, and there are two things he wanted us to do, and one of them was give everyone kind of a cropping tool like L7s, and whatever was being shown, as everyone went up and sort of looked at it and said, "How would you have cropped this?" Which was fascinating because some of these photographs you'd look at and you go, boy, there are 5 ways you could crop this and get an amazing image out of this part over here or that, or maybe just get rid of the top of it. Was a great exercise that was kind of interactive in a way, and it was informative because people see things so differently.
Yeah.
They're drawn to their favorite parts and they say, boy, I would get rid of all that other stuff. It's nice, but that's the cool part.
Yeah.
Which also told me that one of the advantages to having a really good camera, and mine isn't that good, is to have high enough resolution and a great enough exposure that you can actually do significant cropping. Because if you can't, then it just doesn't work as well, of course. And the other thing that we were told to do, which I thought was fascinating, was bring 2 books or 2 maybe links or whatever we had about 2 photographers that we were sort of inspired by or drawn to, or something about them. And for me, one of them was a guy named Jay Maisel, and I don't know if you know Jay. He's 80 some years old and was a great commercial photographer in New York. And he was a guy who he photographed also on the streets. He just had this beautiful eye, and he would shoot just about anything. And his advertising, he sort of elevated advertising photographs to art, basically. But he just basically lived with his camera, and everything he saw on the streets was a composition. And he was a great inspiration. And they had just done a documentary film on him called Jay Myself, which you should look up if you want to see it. And it's about his life in the building that he bought way back in the 70s in the Bowery in New York, and loaded it with 6 floors of his stuff. And the film was actually all about having to move out of that building. So it's kind of a retrospective of his work and the process of him going through his own things and getting rid of memories and all that kind of. It's a fascinating film called Jay Myself.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was really striking was one of the books that I was really drawn to is one called New York Vertical or something like that. And what it did for me was, so many photographers, and I don't quite get this myself. You've got some aspect ratio. It's either, 4:3, 16:9, and you're sort of bound to these things. And I go, no, I crop for subject matter, or I shoot for subject matter. And this was a whole book of, if you're going to do New York skyscrapers, of course they're going to be vertical. And the horizontal ones are going to be horizontal. And to me, it was sort of like, there's no rules or limits to how you want to crop at these things from a aspect ratio point of view. And it's, to me, that kind of made it okay. And I found that I was really drawn to multiple aspect ratio. I didn't care about aspect ratio anymore. I just said, is this vertical or is this horizontal? Or do I flip it? Or do I really make it narrow because that's really striking? And that was an eye opener. And a lot of my shots do those. So,
All right. Well, thank you very much. It was fantastic. I have to watch it on YouTube again.
yeah, I hope the few people who, hadn't seen it and all that will actually go to that channel and watch it. But we'll see.
I apologize for the low turnout. We usually have at least 20, 25 or 30, maybe sometimes 30 people.
Yeah. Is there anybody left?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's 7 of us here.
Okay. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Well, any other
starting to think summer is not going to be our busiest time. Maybe
Yeah. Well, that's
do members.
I get it.
I'll remind everybody to catch it on YouTube, and
Yeah.
it's worth watching.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Anything else?
No, that was amazing. Thank you. And I'll send you a copy of your video because I think you'll enjoy watching it too.
Oh, good. Well, I had a question for you though, Stephanie, because
Sure.
we had our little conversation. I showed you 3 photographs, and you said, "Do you want to do a presentation?" Basically, it's like kind of sight unseen in a way.
No,
So
I could tell you that you had a good and fun, interesting body of work.
yeah. Well, it's probably
Right,
good.
and I love abstract. I think it's.
Yeah.
I love.
Well, I hope that
I love
people will actually, if not taking other photographs you've already done and somehow making them abstract. I don't like doing that with apps, where you spin or zoom and do certain things. It's in the photograph itself. But it really is a fun thing to go out and intentionally shoot, maybe experiment with. And with abstract, there are a lot of experiments that fail, but there are a few that you go, I've stumbled upon something here. This is really fun. And then all of a sudden you spend more time doing abstract.
Yeah, I'm going to play with this challenge. I think it's going to be fun. And I love going to Robeson because I do a lot of jobs there. But
oh, do you?
the plants there are amazing. And
they really are. I mean, you could do a whole show of just, a day in the life of Robeson Harrington.
That's a great idea. Maybe we'll do a night where we'd send everybody to Robeson, shoot. Maybe we'll do our own little click off. But but we'll pick a spot, say Robeson Harrington or something.
Well, what's really fun, if you're actually serious about doing that, what's kind of fun about it is that because it's a garden and it's seasonal, and it also, in the middle of the day, the light's it's pretty harsh. So there are different times that are best times to be there. You don't really know where you're going to get, the best backlight on things, or things are going to be lit in such a way that just about anything you see is going to look beautiful if you photograph it. And that's not every hour of the day. That's only certain times. But we'll talk.
Okay. Well, I would probably say let's do like an hour before sunset or something.
Yeah.
All
well,
right.
I'll let you know. I'm going to go and scout it out because that might be too late, but we'll see.
All right, you guys. We'll see you next month, or actually look out for our email, and I want to see if maybe it makes more sense to wait till September. So we'll see. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Camden.
Thank you.